All righty. I call to order the September meeting of the Mission Fulfillment Committee. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'd like to welcome our student representatives, Sarah Davis from the Twin Cities and Riley Tuft from the University of Minnesota Duluth campus. Welcome. Thank you for being here. We also have Regent Taurobi and Regent Mehran on Zoom joining us. So let's take a look at our agenda. The first item on our agenda is discussion of the committee's 22-23 work plan. And Regent Johnson and I worked in close collaboration with Provost Croson over the summer in developing this plan. And I would like to make a few comments about the work plan and the committee's work as you look at this year, and again, keeping with our thematic approach. But you'll see that the committee has individual touch points with each of the 5 campus leadership in a series of dedicated discussion on undergraduate enrollment, something that's been of key interest to us over the years and critical right now. The Impact 2025 Systems Strategic Plan outlined enrollment goals for each campus as well as the system as a whole. And these conversations begin today with the Crookston campus, and we'll focus on progress toward meeting those goals. And the oversight, of course, is a key component of the board's priority in Impact 2025. It's also important work of this Mission Fulfillment Committee. And now I want to say that some of these conversations may be tough, probably will be tough. And undergraduate enrollment is critical to the success of each individual campus as well as the system as a whole. Building on the campus's individual enrollment conversations, we will have a very important conversation in May focused on tuition and pricing strategies, which is another priority established by our board and President Gable. And finally, I'll note that as the Mission Fulfillment Committee, it was important to us in the development of the plan to strike a balance on agenda items and ensure that there are topics throughout the year that touch all 3 parts of the university's mission: education, research, and outreach. It's our hope that you'll find the plan thoughtful and in line with the board's priorities. We're looking forward to a year of consequential discussion. Provost Croson, would you like to make any comments?
Thank you, Chair Davenport. I would simply add that after the campus-specific discussions of enrollments and the May pricing and tuition strategy conversations, we'll end the year with the discussion of system-wide enrollment coordination strategies. We've discussed these system-wide efforts both last October and last June, and so we felt it was appropriate to close out this year's enrollment series of presentations by revisiting the topic of what we're doing together as well as what we're doing independently. The priorities that emerged from this summer's Board of Regents retreat also included an update on distance education, which we've scheduled for June, an update on commercialization and corporate engagement, which our new Vice President for Research will deliver during his regular report in December, and an update on graduate education, which we try to include every other year. That's currently scheduled for this October. That concludes my remarks, and we're happy to take any questions about the work plan.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, great. Thank you for that. And let's turn to our next agenda item. We just heard about enrollment. And so we would like to look at progress toward the Impact 2025 goals at the Crookston campus. So if we may have Chancellor Mary Holz-Claus join Provost Croson for the presentation, but first I'd like to ask President Gable to provide any comments she may have.
Thank you, Chair Davenport, Vice Chair Johnson, and members of the committee. So as you all know, establishing a system-wide enrollment plan has been a top priority of both the board and the administration, certainly since I became president and probably for quite some time before then. That priority is memorialized through our student success commitment in Impact 2025. And this has yielded the system enrollment plan we brought before you last fall and the continued work that brings us here today for the update that we are about to have and discuss. As part of the board's priorities for next year, as the provost described, each of our campuses will be reporting on their enrollment management strategy. They will emphasize this report through the Impact 2025 lens, and they will provide a review of peer comparisons and competitors, student demographic data, what they're doing around marketing and recruiting, including how we're engaging with K-12 partners. So members of the committee, as we take on this discussion today, across the nation, as you alluded to, Madam Chair, national enrollment is declining. In spring of 2022, 600,000 I should have had more coffee. 662,000 fewer students enrolled in undergraduate programs than during the previous year, a drop of 4.7% in 1 year, which is steeper than the decline even last fall that we reported to you. To date, the undergraduate student body has dropped by nearly 1.4 million students, or 9.4% during the pandemic. We are not immune to this trend. This trend is of particular concern, I know, to each and every one of you. And you'll be hearing more today over the course of the year how we're seeking to address those concerns on each campus and system-wide. But before I turn it back to Chancellor Holtzclaw, I want to take a moment to express my sincere appreciation to everyone who's been involved in the development of the strategic enrollment plan, and in advance to Chancellor Holtzclaw and across our system to the shared work we've been doing around systemness in this challenging issue. So with that, Madam Chair, I will turn it over to the team to continue their presentation.
Thank you. Chancellor Holtzclaw, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, President Gable and Chair Davenport and members of the committee. I'm going to start this off as I'm going to start off each of the campus presentations, giving you a little bit of a system-wide context, and then I'll turn it over to each campus. As you can see in the work plan discussion, and as you've discussed in your retreat, enrollment's going to be a theme of this year's Mission Fulfillment Committee presentations. We've slated 7 presentations in total on this topic. In May, we'll present a discussion of tuition and pricing strategies for the board to consider, including our current strategy and alternative strategies for pricing and aid, payment plans, and many other features. But before that discussion, we intend to provide a presentation from each campus on their enrollment status, including their tuition and pricing tactics rather than strategy. We know that questions and comments about tuition and pricing strategy is likely to come up during the individual presentations. We're likely to defer those conversations until the May meeting when we can explore alternative models. Instead, today's presentation and the subsequent 4 will focus on enrollment activities and tactics based on our current tuition and pricing strategy. Based on your discussion at the retreat, these individual campus presentations will include benchmarking against the system-wide strategic plan goals, demographics of the campus, recruiting strategies, including K-12 outreach, retention strategies, and student success initiatives. As we did last year, again in June, we'll describe our coordinated system-wide efforts around enrollment. So as always, we start with our strategic plan and the system-wide enrollment picture. You can go to the next slide. So as President Gable notes, Impact 25 sets undergrad goals for each campus by fall 25. And in these, the actions you'll hear in these presentations are all about actions each campus is taking to meet those goals. So if we start at the system-wide level, this graph shows undergrad enrollment in all of our campuses. As you can see, overall enrollment has been relatively flat over the past 10 years. Up until the pandemic, that is until fall 2020, changes year to year were within 1% up or down. However, in fall 2020, as President Gable mentioned nationally, we saw a decrease of enrollment of 2.6%. So about 2.5 times the variation that we had seen pre-pandemic. And we're working on recovering from that unanticipated shock. Crookston campus, who will be presenting today, is the blue section in this slide, so to give you a sense of where we're sitting. You can go to the next slide. I should note that since Census Day is not till September 19th on the Twin Cities and Rochester campuses, these graphs end at fall 2021. But when we show you the same graphs in October, we'll have the fall 22 numbers, and you should expect to receive the regular enrollment memo between now and that October meeting. So in this slide, we show enrollment for freshmen, new high school students, and in the next slide, I'm going to show you enrollment for transfers. So you can clearly see the COVID effect on freshman enrollment, both the dip in fall 2020 and the significant rebound this past fall, not right now, but the past fall. Go ahead to the next slide. So this slide, however, shows a general and nationwide trend of declining transfer students on all of our campuses. Regionally, both Minnesota State 2-year and 4-year enrollments have been declining. From 2011 to 2020, so roughly this period, first-time students at Minnesota State's 2-year schools dropped by over 30%, and transfers into the Minnesota State 4-year schools have dropped by 22%. System-wide, our transfer enrollment has dropped by 20% during that time. There is also a COVID effect. You can see a kink in fall 2020, but the decline in transfer students is sustained and is nationwide. That decline, as expected, is having differential impacts on our different campuses, which is what led us to include a special section on transfer student strategies in last spring's system-wide enrollment report. So in this system-wide context, I'd like now to turn the presentation over to Chancellor Holtz-Klaus, who will talk about enrollment at the Crookston campus specifically.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Davenport and members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about our enrollment management strategy and provide you an update. I'll be discussing how our plan complements both the system-wide strategic plan and specifically Commitment 1 and the comprehensive system-wide enrollment strategy. Our enrollment goal, as you see here, as set in Impact 2025, is 2,100 students. At the time the plan was established, this was a realistic and attainable goal, moderately growing on-campus enrollment to 900 people and online to 1,200. In this plan, our campus recruitment would remain steady at 250 new students each fall, while online recruitment would be maintained around 350 annually. As you see from this slide, the peak for our on-campus enrollment was more than 10 years ago at 1,100 students. This trend line for our campus has been a steady decline. Plans in 2019 were to reverse the trend line and increase the campus enrollment to 900 by targeting 250 new students on campus each fall and implementing multiple student strategies to improve our retention. As you know, enrollment is both a combination of recruitment and retention. As you'll recall, in 2019, we discontinued our football program with the intention of reinvesting football dollars to enhance recruitment in other sports to offset the projected enrollment loss. Unfortunately, we all remember what happened in February and March of 2020 with COVID hitting, and those reinvestments were not able to occur. COVID has also significantly impacted recruitment efforts, dropping fall 20 and fall 21 on-campus recruitment to 200 students, a 20% decline, and also impacting our retention negatively. Fall 2022 is looking stronger, and we plan to achieve 250 new students for fall 2023. The dash projections on this chart reflect this recruitment effort. The enrollment trend for online has had a steady uptick, culminating with a high of 1,055 students in 2020. Then COVID effects became our reality. As we discuss later, the COVID vaccination requirement for all students included our online population. Additionally, we found a greater percentage of online students were dropping out, most likely due to increased pandemic home lifestyle demands such as childcare and school transitions, as well as perhaps increased employment demands. On top of this, recruitment dropped significantly from averaging 400 new students per year to approximately 300 in 2021 and 21-22. New initiatives, which I'll outline here in a little bit, are hoped to reinvigorate our online recruitment. These new strategies that we'll be talking about give us some confidence that we can affect and hopefully really surpass the projections noted on this graph. But before we get into details about these strategies, I want to share with you a few demographics, which I think will be helpful for you to understand the difference between our very two distinct populations, our on-campus and online students, as well as we frame up for you some of the aspects which may be affecting enrollments. Crookston's on-campus student is a traditional student who graduated from high school and attends full-time. As you'll note from this slide, more than 64% are from Minnesota, 12% are from North Dakota, and 6% are from South Dakota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. We have a high percentage of first-generation students, and unlike many other institutions who struggle with a first-generation achievement gap, our first-year students perform equal to our continuing generation students. Our on-campus students are predominantly white, and 34% are Pell eligible. 42% of our on-campus student population is currently male. As recently as 2016, 54% of our students were male, and many of them had chosen to take our agricultural programs, which were really attractive to this demographic. The nationwide trend of fewer males attending college, compounded with an even greater decline of males and rural males attending post-secondary, has played a significant part in our enrollment story. Of the 622 on-campus students, 225 are student athletes. This represents 36% of our on-campus students. We are a member of the Northern Sun Intercollegiate Conference and currently have 4 Division II sports for men and 6 for women. We also have an equestrian hunt seat and Western teams and 2 club sports, hockey for men, which we started in 2020, and trap shooting for both men and women. Over the past 10 years, there's been a 15% decline in high school graduates in Northwest Minnesota. This decline in regional high school graduates mirrors a Crookston enrollment decline. This is unfortunately projected to continue. Similar declines across other rural Minnesota regions, such as rural North Dakota, are forecasted. To this end, we are looking to broaden our reach to recruit students from farther away. Historically, our academic programs in agriculture have made up more than half of our on-campus enrollment, and regional students who grew up in family farms were attracted to our academic programs in the agricultural field. With a shift away from larger number of rural students growing up in farming, we need to recruit differently. We need to engage students who have not grown up with a farming background and help them realize the opportunities in the agricultural industry. With our agriculture partners, we are addressing this challenge. We're in the grade schools working very closely with students in STEM programming and acquainting them with career options in agriculture beyond the traditional plows and cows, with new pathway programs by going into grade schools to acquaint students with these opportunities. This slide represents a few things we are actively doing to address and turn around our on-campus trends. The first one is pathways. As we said, we are actively working with younger students. In fact, this summer, there were probably more younger people on our campus than I've ever seen since I've been on the Crookston campus. We're working on improving our local outreach to Crookston's Latinx population, where more than 40% of the K-6 students identify with Latinx heritage. And these students have historically not readily attended higher education in our region. Members of our campus student success team are planning regular office hours at Crookston High School and grade school to better assist all students in making quality higher education choices. We're also partnering with White Earth Tribal and Community College to provide their students with opportunities to complete their degrees in early childhood education and elementary education. Through a donor-funded position, we've hired a STEM education outreach coordinator. This coordinator delivers faculty-developed STEM-focused learning activities in regional and elementary middle schools in our region. The hope is that this outreach inspires students at a young age to engage in experimentation and research in the areas of science and agriculture. With our 4-H partners in Northwest Minnesota and a CIFAR grant, we were able to bring regional Somali youth to campus for them to experience Campus Live. Most of these students in this program, from the CIFAR program, came from Moorhead or the East Grand Forks region. And we recently hosted a regional FFA summer conference and are always looking for additional ways to partner with these two organizations. As you know, the Share My App concept invites students who apply to the Twin City campus to also submit their applications to the greater Minnesota campuses. This program, tentatively this fall, will yield 4 students for us, a number that perhaps looks small in the grand scheme of our university enrollment, but even single-digit enrollment is important to our campus. As I think you recently heard, Regent Svigum, we are at the Crookston campus actively investigating pilot 2+2 programs with the Twin Cities. A student will complete 2 years at Crookston and be guaranteed admission to the Twin Cities campus program after meeting criteria such as minimum GPA and other elements set. The hope is that we in the Crookston campus can provide some capacity for lower division undergraduate coursework that will readily transfer to upper division program completion. If conversations go well, agreements and pathways for students will be mapped out to pilot a small cohort as early as fall 2023. And as many of you are aware, for the past year, Crookston and Morris admissions offices have been looking for opportunities where the two can collaborate. As we look at the academic offerings in these two campuses, there is very little overlap. Additionally, the campus culture of the two institutions are attracted to equally unique student demographics, such that competition for students is really quite minimal. As admission counselors were on recruitment visits 1 year ago today, they'd represent both campuses, being able to easily identify which campus would best fit for the prospective students relatively soon within a conversation. While it's probably really too early in collaboration to be able to measure explicit benefits, we at Crookston can say we've seen an increase in the number of applicants in North Dakota, where traditionally we had recruited but didn't have the time and spend more than typical time now because we have our colleagues in Morris who are representing us in other markets. And in Wisconsin, which is a marketplace that Crookston had never really ever recruited from before, we're seeing, because of the Morris counselor who does go there, we're seeing, again, a small uptick in the number of both interests as well as, we hope, students who matriculate to us from Wisconsin. And then a program which you may or may not have heard of is to reversing declining post-secondary enrollments and reduce our out-of-state migration, which we know is significant in Minnesota. The Minnesota Office of Higher Education has developed a new program called Direct Admissions. This program is designed to be similar to successful programs in other regions in the country. Fall 2022 will be the pilot year. Direct admission programs are designed to present high school students with a broad array of opportunities for continuing their educations after high school graduation. The state aims to present these students with a list of colleges and universities based upon the student's high school academic record, who would generally grant the student admission. The main goal is to show these students, particularly those in underserved areas and first-generation students, the array of post-secondary options that are available to them. This year, 43 institutions of higher learning are participating in this pilot. There's 33 two-year schools and 10 four-year institutions, including the Crookston campus and also the Morris and Duluth campuses. 44 high schools representing 7,300 seniors are participating in this pilot. Higher education institutions have provided the Office of Higher Education with some basic criteria for admissions, including minimum GPA and performance in college preparatory, such as English, math, and science courses. Participating high schools then will provide the State Office of Higher Education a list of seniors for fall of 2022, along with pertinent information about the students' transcripts. The Office of Higher Education then will essentially do the matching, pairing a high school student information with the correct criteria selected by the various institutions of higher education. Then high school students will receive a letter stating essential, congratulations, your high school record indicates that you meet the criteria in these following universities or colleges, along with information such as touring colleges, the application process, and financial aid information. We in the colleges receive a list of students who meet the criteria indicated at the beginning. Then we are free to recruit these students. At Crookston, we're really aggressively planning and messaging how we are going to work and help build an expedited and easier application process for these students. So if you Google this program across the United States, you'll see that probably most recently 2 of the I states, but specifically Illinois and Idaho, have started this program, and it has yielded and helped to increase the number of high school students seeking post-secondary education. So TBD, but we anticipate that this will be an excellent outcome. I wanted to speak a little bit about our online students, and then we'll talk about both challenges and opportunities with our online students. As you see here, this is a demographic profile of our online students. Recall, our online student population is nearly all adults, completing a degree while they're usually raising their family and working full-time. In fact, the average age you see of our online student is almost 32 years of age. And more than half of our online students are first-generation students. Over the years, and we've been doing online student programming for about 12 or 14 years now, our students started out initially with generally 5 to 6 hours per semester, and we're actually seeing that our students are now taking up to 9.9 or almost 10 credit hours on average. And this is really very consistent with the focus group and survey work that we've done with our students. These are adults. They want accelerated programs to get their degree as quickly as possible. And so to accommodate this trend, this fall, we are actually piloting an accelerated accounting degree. And as you know, this is one of the basic tenets of the Next Gen Agriculture program, which will be launching soon. I want to talk just a few moments about online challenges, but then obviously the online opportunities that we see. Fall 2019 was a peak online enrollment for us. COVID hit spring 2020, and we saw some decline in enrollment, mostly students not returning. We don't have statistical data to really back up the reasons for this decline. However, our anecdotal conversations and we have really talked with our students about they had many pandemic-related burdens, including childcare disruptions, distance learning from K through 12, disrupted employment demands, as all resulted in our adult learners discontinuing their education. Although we felt we did a really excellent job of communicating the societal reasons for the vaccination requirement to our online students, fall 2021 ended with 90 students with a vaccination attestation registration hold in place. This was 10% of our online enrollment. In spring 2022, we had 85 new enrollments, 34 or 40%, small n's, but large percentage for us, ended the semester with the attestation hold and were not able to be retained. The COVID vaccination requirement for online students has been lifted for 2022. We're hoping this will both improve our ability to recruit online students as well as those that we do recruit. And then, of course, we reached out to all of our students who did not return to reconnect and tell them of the change. COVID also introduced online course delivery to many other institutions. We don't know exactly how many institutions will continue or work to grow online programs, but we do know that there probably will be increasing competition in the online learning marketplace. 90% of our online students also enter as transfer students. Many of them have attended multiple institutions throughout their career. Our online transfer students average 3.3 transcripts. Even with a significant number of credits already earned, these students may still face a daunting amount of coursework in order to fulfill a particular academic program degree requirements. And then, as we know, financial aid for online students is complex. As a general rule, financial aid programs, while available to part-time students, are really designed around the traditional full-time student. They're also not very forgiving for prior unsuccessful college attendance. Federal Pell Grants and state grants are prorated for part-time attendance, but eligibility for these programs is limited to 6 years. Prior attendance, combined with part-time enrollment, oftentimes results that our online students have run out of eligibility on these programs. Institutionally, Promise scholarships are a key offset to our higher tuition price. Promise scholarships, however, are only available to students enrolled in 12 or more credits. Thus, 50% of our online students don't qualify for this program. Similarly, many of our donor-funded scholarships, although we're trying to have more conversations and change those, are limited to students attending full-time. But instead of all the challenges, which I'm sure we'll be addressing, I'd like to talk about the opportunities. We really are doing so much particularly on both on campus and online, that our meager staff, we've sort of laughingly taken to which program are you talking about before you begin your conversation. So let me share with you a few. First is Guild. Guild is an educational concierge for corporate firms. They help large corporations bundle and market educational services that can be offered as an employee benefit. They facilitate the paperwork and help students who are interested in starting their 4-year education or returning. A new customer of Guild this past year is, of course, a Minnesota-based firm, Target. So we will be providing degree program online for Target employees to begin with initially. This fall, we have 51 students who are joining us online in the program that Guild and Target have started with us. Another corporate partner is Huntington Bank, and they've designed UMN Crookston as a preferred online provider of undergraduate programs for the 38,000 plus employees in the Carlson School for Graduate Programs. So we're very young in our relationships with both Guild and Huntington Bank, but look forward to the opportunities that these might provide us for online learning in the future. We're also re-engaging our regional employees. Employers. It is my understanding many years ago we launched our online programs and we had very solid relations with several regional employers. Through the years, these relationships have waned and others have competed with us. We now have a team of 2 recruiters that are working with regional corporations to develop similar programs to those that we have with Guild and Huntington. We are actively working with programs also through the Department of Employment and Economic Development, DEED, here in Minnesota, to help offset some of the expenses for employers. And then a new program, which we launched this spring, is called Archie's Institute for Sustainable Agriculture. This program is for veterans and helps them begin hydroponic and low-input vegetable production. We have a very small cohort located near Camp Pendleton in Southern California. These students get some small hands-on instruction near the base and then articulate to our online agricultural business degrees. And then we are very excited to launch soon the Next Gen Ag Pilot Program. Based upon input from extensive work with agricultural employers across Minnesota, we're partnering with CFANS to design a curriculum that meets their needs. As we presented earlier, we are focusing on what the employers told us, that they need students who have strong professional skills. We are privileged to work with some of Minnesota's agricultural firms to launch this program soon. In May, as Provost Croson mentioned, is planned there will be a robust discussion of tuition pricing. So I'll highlight our current situation for your backgrounding. Here's how we stack up among our competitors for published price. The total price, for instance, as you see there, University of Wisconsin River Falls is the lowest at $18,000. We are at $24,000, and the University of North Dakota leads at $24,500. As the University of Minnesota operates at a high tuition, high aid pricing model, UMN Crookston becomes very affordable, though, when our net price is considered. Net price is calculated by taking the total price shown on the previous slide minus average gift aid, including Pell Grants and Minnesota State Grants and scholarships, and the UMN Promise scholarships. Grants and Promise scholarships, as you know, are income-based. In that scenario, we are one of the lowest 4 years amongst our competitors, but we do recruit North Dakota students who are not eligible for much of our Minnesota need-based aid. In this slide, we're illustrating as how we rank compared to our institutional peers. Again, being a higher published price when financial aid, especially for Minnesota students, is taken into consideration. We are very competitive. But it's imperative that we market that information, which is why we're always both talking and taking every opportunity and every dollar that we have and communicating that around our marketplace. In your docket, we have included examples of our marketing creatives. We saw an uptick in interest in the Once a System-Wide, which M4U was launched several years ago. Additionally, most of the creatives that you see in that docket and you see on this slide were developed with assistance from our marketing professionals in the Twin Cities. We are excited that this campaign will be again initiated in a more limited fashion for our campuses in Crookston, Duluth, and Morris for prospective 2023 and beyond students. Generally, we market in greater Minnesota, farther Minnesota, which I was going to say Dr. McMaster's would not appreciate my term, but farther Minnesota are the two tiers of county that touch Canada. And we also market in North Dakota, even though our numbers are smaller in North Dakota and they're quite lean in some of the rural communities. We also market in the eastern border of South Dakota, and now with Morris's working with us in our communication and our admissions in the western border of Wisconsin. These marketing tactics that we do include digital marketing, search ads, social media ads, and display ads. We're also going back to old school with old school billboards, and we have billboards in Fargo, Grand Forks, Detroit Lakes, Devils Lake, Crookston, and Dilworth, because our media follow-through shows that this increased awareness has really helped us in Crookston. In fact, our research has shown something very interesting in marketing. We don't have a good image. We don't have a bad image. We don't have an image. So the last couple of years, we've taken to really working in regional broadcasting, television, radio, live streaming, print ads, anywhere where we can get our name out. And I was going to say, we also go to, not surprisingly, areas where we have strong programs. We go to almost every horse show in Minnesota and North Dakota to complement our equestrian major. So this past year, we have really allowed whatever our budget would allow us to pay for in media. We really target the audience, obviously, as prospective students, high school transfers, and adult learners, and then, of course, influencers, parents, grandparents, counselors, teachers, coaches, etc. And for those of you in marketing, and I see that Regent Powell is here, but I think he would be proud how that we are able to make every dime squeak with our marketing strategy. We have a really small but incredibly talented team that, in addition to all their other responsibilities, have working here with the Twin Cities, put together a campaign that's gaining exposure and brand recognition in the region. Of course, no enrollment strategy is complete without discussion about retention strategies. Among our dedicated efforts in the last several years has been the implementation and consistent tweaking of a class required for all incoming students called the first year experience. We also recently moved from faculty advising for classwork to a dedicated staff who know the ins and outs, requirements, and consistencies in helping our students achieve their goals and stay on track. So these counselors really help counsel through the process, while our faculty help with helping students on career counseling. We have enhanced the services we provide to students and really have a much better understanding of who our student is, so that we can admit a student that will be successful and stay at the University of Minnesota Crookston. So as you can see, the enrollment strategies are quite complex, and to use the analogy of an engine, it requires that all of our cylinders be firing. Through the years, we probably had a few cylinders misfiring, but do honestly think that we have that engine turned around now, and we'll see the results in the next few years to meet our goals. I'm sure you have some questions for me, but I've also posted a few questions for you that I'd like to have your thoughts on. And one of those is, how would you suggest we recruit, particularly for our agricultural related programs that are on campus, given the shifting dynamics and demographics of Minnesota? And then what new markets would you suggest for both on-campus and online recruitment? Thank you, Chair Davenport. I'll be happy to take your questions and would appreciate your thoughts on these questions.
Thank you, Chancellor Holtz-Close. And I want to remind ourselves that we're looking at Crookston enrollment, which is part of our system enrollment, and we'll be hearing from each campus. But that's also in the context of state environment, which has downward trends, national environment, downward trends, decreased enrollment, decreased number of high school graduates, yet increase in diversity of our populations that we serve. I also want to thank you for introducing and giving a good explanation about published price and the net price, the price that it ends up with, because in the private colleges, they have the discounts, and we don't always recognize that within public sector education. I have one question, but I'm going to put it in reserve because I'm going to bet that either Regent Swigum or Regent Hips is going to ask it, and we'll start with Regent Swigum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I may disappoint you. Chancellor Holsclaws, I realize that we're sitting on this side of the table and we're not up in Crookston to help you on the ground. So it's easy to be an armchair quarterback from, 250 miles away or whatever. But I'm going to qualify my question by this, and thanks for the opportunity slide you had there, including the 2+2 program that you're initiating. Thank you for that. But when I was up there with you and maybe 2 years ago for the commencement and had a wonderful time, thank you for the lunch, and it was very, very nice. But when I talked to you and your assistant, John Hoffman, after, you remember, I think, the conversation very well, after the commencement, out of the total graduating class, there was like 4 students from Crookston, 0 from Ada, 0 from East Grand Forks, 0 from McIntosh Winter, your surrounding communities. And I stressed to you at that time, you got to win your home district. You just got to win your home district. Any politician knows that if you don't win your home district where people know you, and you only win where people don't know you, that's not a good thing. You got to win your home district. Give me these opportunities, the things we can do to get into Ada, to get into East Grand Forks, to get into Thief River Falls. I may not make myself clear, but we got to win our home district. And I don't know if we're doing better since I was up there 2 years ago, but at that time, 2 years ago, we were doing poorly. I'm being too blunt. I'm sorry, but we got to win Ada. We got to get 2 from Ada, 6 from East Grand Forks, and 10 from McIntosh.
We are doing better. And if you look at this year's incoming class, you will find that the demographics are such that even though they've been against us, we are getting the 2 from Ada, the 6 from Thief River, and that's been a very targeted approach. Being able to aggressively be in the high schools, being in the grade schools. As I said, this summer, we had every one of those communities were on our campus. And we have to start that conversation 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, because many of those decisions are already made, as you noted, by sophomores. And when you were there, I would just say that had not been part of our strategy. And I was going to say we all have different strategies, and that had not been one 4 years ago, but that is part of our strategy now. Those students that you saw would have started back in 2014 or 15. And now it's definitely an area where we're going. This past year and this coming year, being able to be out in the high schools will be even stronger. So we recognize Polk County, and as we know, students who are closer to home are more likely to be successful in their home areas. And so we are heavily recruiting locally. That being said, we're also running against that demographic, and so sometimes we have to reach out and find that 1 or 2 people in some smaller rural areas, perhaps in North Dakota too. But yeah, thank you. I heard you, and and so we are definitely working on that.
All right, Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Chair Davenport. A quick question and then a couple thoughts. On the pricing, I just want to make sure, and you may have said this, and I just missed it, but on the pricing versus regional competitors, are the two slides, the published price and the average net price, are those both on campus? Because published price, it says students living on campus, the average net price does not.
Yeah, those are both on campus.
Okay, both on,
Thank you.
okay. And you know, I've made that reflection at this board before. I'm trying to think how long ago it might have been, but, you know, I do think that the published price has a lot to do, you know, you talk about people making decisions, you know, early in elementary school even, but I think a lot of people decide where they even apply based on the published price. They're, you know, if they're not in the door to see what the discounts or what other support might be there, I still think having a high published price particularly for regional and particularly for in-state, regional campuses and in-state students, I think it really depresses the number that are looking in the first instance. They're saying, well, you know, I'd maybe like to go to a larger school, and as a published price, NDSU is already less expensive, and so they're not even taking a look at what we offer in Crookston. But, you know, it's such an interesting dynamic. Our system campuses, you know, watching this happen over 3 decades now, you know, and taking kind of a historical perspective, you know, it's such a massive change in population. I mean, at one point in time, we're 90% rural and 10%, you know, urban and suburban, and now it's, you know, dramatically different. Much smaller population in the rural communities, and then on top of that, you know, not only is there a much larger percentage of students coming out of larger schools and metropolitan areas, but the desire to go to larger complex institutions, you know, is obviously putting huge pressure on small liberal arts colleges all over the country. And so we have to really, you know, kind of figure out what we have the capacity to do. And now as the land-grant university and as the premier state, you know, system, in my opinion, and I think is the opinion shared by the vast majority of people, you know, why are we in different places? You know, I went through the process of the Waseca campus closing, and one of the elements, and actually Waseca was compared to all 2 years in the state was quite healthy, but you know, the university had moved away from 2-year and focused solely on 4-year and up, and you know, that was a transition that was made. Crookston, of course, made the transition from 2-year to a 4-year at the time, and there's a lot that went into all that dynamic. Obviously, having a campus at Rochester was something of interest, being a major metropolitan area and so on, without revisiting that. But you know, should we have a presence in all corners of the state? I personally think it's important. I personally think it's very valuable. I think that you want, you know, even as we become more you know, virtual as a society, I still think having that opportunity, having that presence is important, because eventually you have, you know, even like from just a practical legislative standpoint, a huge percentage of the state that from time to time comes into the majority and has a lot to say about where funding and support is going to go within the state. You know, if we're not there's a very, very large swath that doesn't really have access and a relationship with the university in that way. So I think I start from the premise that Crookston is really important. And when I watch these trend lines, it obviously is very concerning, because, you know, while I think we've been a vanguard in the online stuff, anybody can be. You know, and so unless you've made it to a kind of a critical mass, that you're, you know, a national competitor in that environment, as we've seen Purdue's and other schools really step forward in that respect. You know, that's something that I think is helpful. I think it's really good. I'm glad that we've done it, but I don't, you know, I can't necessarily hang my hat that that's going to sustain the viability. And so we really have to, I think we have to be very aggressive, and I think that we have to have, you know, significant conversations. Now, possibly the school could continue on as a world-class horse education, or, you know, horsepersonship institution and stuff. But you know, I would just simply put my input into this is that I think we should be smarter about how we market our price. I think we should show that we're less expensive than our regional peers, and do what we have to so that that's known since 3rd and 4th grade, as opposed to having to somehow get you in the door to explain to you how we're going to make it cheaper. And then I think that we have to really be aggressive about making sure the programs that we offer are going to be attractive to an on-campus environment. I would also second Regent Swigham's comments. about having to have that access, and success with with students that like that environment. It's a lot easier to get a kid from Ada or McIntosh to spend her collegiate career on Crookston than it is to get somebody out of Bloomington. And so those are my thoughts as we go forward. I'd say be bold, be aggressive, and I think it's a very important asset and a very important part of what the university provides to the state of Minnesota.
Thank you, Regent Rocha, for those comments. Regent Kenyanya.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Chancellor Holtzclaws, for the presentation. I often don't know what I'm talking about when I'm up here. This time I for sure don't. Because I don't know much about agriculture and farming, so I'm gonna make some observations and you're gonna tell me if I'm right or wrong here. My understanding is that it's a family business, it's a very generational business. A lot of people who are in it, their parents and folks previously were. And it's something that happens everywhere, right? And as I was kind of listening to this conversation, I think earlier you mentioned trying to reach immigrant communities and some diverse communities, and I was reflecting, and I was back in Kenya just over the holiday weekend. I went back to the village. My parents were farmers, right? Their parents were farmers. That's absolutely what I come from, and I know nothing about it. Right, and I may be wrong, I may be right here, but I think there's a lot of immigrant communities that come from agriculture and then move here and wouldn't even know how to enter that, how to contribute to that, but it is what they know. There may be an opportunity there. I don't know what it is to engage that first generation. And then that's a pathway to those next generation, right? Like those, I think you mentioned some Somali youth that were brought to campus. It's possible that, some of their parents, were doing this as well. Steve, you will be proud. I'll send you a video of when I was milking a cow in December. I was not very good at it. But, I just think with agriculture being global, I think the quote doesn't say it's the oldest profession. I think it is, though. But perhaps there's an opportunity there, Chancellor.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Chair Davenport and Regent Kenyanya. One of the programs, particularly that we are targeting right now with our vets, the low input sustainable, also really easily transfers to new immigrant areas, allows them to get in without the expense. They're basically producing hydroponically or even in containers vegetables that are then put into a local marketplace. So that's an example that we are piloting with right now. But the other part too is that even though I spoke about agriculture as being obviously very important, it's, as I said, more than plows and cows. And historically, every year there's about 35 to 40,000 positions in the United States in the field of agriculture that are not filled because we are not producing enough graduates. And so that's why we need to really help people understand and find people who maybe have an interest in science but hadn't thought, for instance, of food science, food and nutrition, as those, and those are probably two programs that we'll look at piloting with the 2+2 with CFANS right now as a way to get more people into the field. The other area that I didn't speak about is our online students. About 80% of them are taking degrees in business. And so again, we're meeting as you said, Regent Rocha, our land grant need an institution of access for people who normally wouldn't have access. And of our online students, half of those that come from Minnesota are coming from the Twin Cities metro area. So again, it's an access or availability that meets our needs of, as we said, of our land grant mission with that. Thank you for your comments. And I'd like to see that photo.
Thank you. Regent Hipsch.
Thank you, Chair Davenport, and thank you for your great presentation. I live exactly about halfway between Morris and Crookston. I'm very familiar with both of the campuses, and I think they're both very much needed. When I look at the future of Crookston especially, I think of not what they're currently offering, but what we need in our communities, more so. And right now, we have a shortage of lawyers, we have a shortage of accountants that do tax work, we have a shortage of systems engineers for our plants. I mean, we could use a lot of those because we don't have the workers to fill the plants, so we're gonna have to automate. And I think the whole, what we really need is more of an applied approach to education. So it's somebody at Crookston, maybe if you're getting a degree in business at Carlson, it's more of a theoretical and you're working for a Fortune 500 or a big accounting firm or something. But an accounting degree at Crookston, you could do that, but also you can set up your own shop in a small town and make a really good living and live where you want to live. And we're really short. We're really short of these people, but we have to kind of push that. We have an accounting degree with a real local tax emphasis because otherwise they'll go work for an accounting firm and they'll never come back to Perm, Minnesota. But if they can start off in Perm, Minnesota, they'll stay there. And that's one of the things I'm noticing. The other thing I'm noticing too is what is the path? If you devote your life to the University of Minnesota, whether it's at Crookston or Morris, is there a path to get into graduate schools? There's a lot of kids that aren't ready to go to Minneapolis from Perm, Minnesota, but they would go to Crookston or Morris for 4 years if they had a sure path to get into a graduate school or a vet school or a law school. You know, is there a pre-law program? Some of these things. I think there's just a ton of kids that if they had any kind of an edge going to one of our schools versus another school, they would take that, whether it's transferring credits or whatever else. So I think we need these campuses. We need them to be successful. There's obviously a lot of headwinds working against us with lower populations and whatever else. And maybe that's a bigger discussion, not for us, but for the whole state of Minnesota, to talk about what are we going to do with this overcapacity. But right now, we have to play in our reality, and the reality is, we're going to have to offer some of these things. I love the next generation ag. I love, is there a next generation accounting? Is there a small business management, super small business, where a kid out of high school isn't ready to take over a Subway shop in a small town, but a college degree kid is, and there's a lot of money to be made. And so, anyway, those are my thoughts. So, thanks.
Thank you. I'll tag on to you
Sure.
with my question, which you almost got there, is when you look at your 2+2s and you look at Next Gen Ag, there's opportunities in Crookston for program completion. Is that part of the discussion so that rather than come to the Twin Cities campus for an accounting completion or whatever, that some faculty would go to Crookston to hit that local continuity, I guess I'd say, on program completion?
Thank you, Chair Davenport, for your question, and Regent Hips for your questions and comments. That will be part of that. And the other part that we have actively and will continue is continuation onto either professional or graduate school. And many of you, I think, are familiar, for instance, with one program. It's called VetFast, which guarantees for students and as freshmen joining either Crookston or some of our other campuses, if they meet the criteria, they are actually accepted into veterinary school at the Twin Cities with some other aspects that they have to meet, obviously grade point average along the way. And again, that creates more of a pathway or pipeline onto our graduate and professional schools. We also have similar programs with the Twin Cities in the nursing field, and some conversations that we're starting with other colleges, particularly looking at more opportunities to get that professional for that either bachelor's of science or above. And so these are just different ways that all of us are now saying, how do we help our students in a very targeted and yet very specific way on those pathway programs. And she said, even starting with fourth graders, as we go through that, most of our fourth graders now know that you can come to the University of Minnesota at less, so we're not waiting to hit them. We're not waiting to have any of these conversations with students and trying to help them. So as we all know, demographics have changed, and the way that we communicate, the way that we market to our students and to our parents have to be very aggressive, very bold, and very different than we've done in the past.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Regent Farnsworth, then Regent Tad Johnson, and Regent Ruth Johnson to wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Davenport, and I know less about agriculture than my friend Regent Kenyanya does, so I'm not even going to say anything about agriculture, but 3 quick comments. One, about the marketing creative slide. Really appreciated this presentation in general, but particularly excited about the marketing pieces and just the direction that we're headed in terms of being more creative and more innovative with marketing. I mean, this is the day and age where half of my TikTok feed is filled with ads regarding higher ed. So you're really seeing it everywhere. And so I'm excited that we're getting more innovative there. Getting at the second question on your last slide around Regent's feedback around new markets that we would suggest for both on-campus and online recruitment, and then looping it together with the online conversation. I really like what we do at Crookston in general, but particularly with the online piece. I think the ability to get a robust online education under that University of Minnesota degree, while also taking into account everything that we've talked about around opportunities to positively impact our local communities. I think an example of that, I think it was under Guild Education, around what you were talking about with Target employees. I think that's a great example of that. Target is obviously a cornerstone business in our state, and the fact that we're plugging in there in a unique way really folds into all of that, but also is something that Crookston is uniquely offering by way of what we do with online education at Crookston. The third thing I'll point to really briefly regarding page 32 and 33, the pricing versus institutional peers and pricing versus regional competitors. As we've heard, we're having that more deep dive, robust discussion in May, so I look forward to that in this committee. But I do agree that in terms of published total price, or what people often refer to as sticker price, that's important for us to consider, and a number of us heard that very loud and clear during our visits to Duluth, Crookston, and Morris last year. So those are my 3 comments. Excellent presentation, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Regent Farnsworth. Regent Tad Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Davenport, and just wanted to, first of all, thank you, Chancellor Holtzclaw, for your presentation. It's very nice to see you again. We work very closely when I was working for President Gable and Karen Diver. And I just wanted to commend you on the outreach you've done with the 2 largest reservations in Minnesota, White Earth and Red Lake. And you had mentioned White Earth in your presentation. We talked about numerous things, from summer programs to bridge programs, to the fact that one of the many things that tribes, particularly White Earth, is interested in is food sovereignty. And I was just wondering, also wanted to commend you on creating one of the great advisory boards, American Indian advisory boards in the system. But just wondering how those recruitment efforts are going, and if you're planting seeds at the grade school level as you are with some of your other programs.
Thank you, Chair Davenport. Regent Johnson. We are working as closely as we can right now with some of the schools, particularly on White Earth and Red Lake Nations. And so as we know, those seeds, third and fourth grade, oftentimes are not going to actually show that the outcome for several years. But we're being very intentional, particularly around the food sovereignty issue, which again, something which everybody can relate to, everybody eats. And so you start with a commonality and also appreciation of the diversity and the opportunity for each of us to learn from each other and the White Earth and Crookston campus. So we have this fall, we actually have a number of different programs where we're working together with that. And I would say that a lot of that comes because of the good work that you did, the connections that you made for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Ruth Johnson, Regent Ruth Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Davenport and Chancellor Holzclaus. Just a quick comment and a question. Every time I come to attend a meeting here, I'm driving up Highway 52 from Rochester to the Twin Cities, and about halfway up, I see a really interesting area that's supported by HAFA, the Hmong American Farmers Association. They have some interesting fields and they're working, and I love seeing what they're doing at every stage through the spring, summer, and fall. And with Regent Kenyania's comments and thinking a little bit about, immigrant agricultural work, I'm just wondering with that, and maybe there are other legacies like that around the state, that maybe next generation of those who've been doing that might have their children or grandchildren interested in pursuing more formal education in agriculture, and just don't know whether we've looked into those kind of things. And Regent Robbie may know some more about that than I do, but there are things like that going on, and perhaps those are opportunities as well.
Good comments.
Thank you, Regent Johnson, for those comments. And I believe that our extension director will be speaking shortly. And she will also share with you some of those outreach opportunities and ways that we are working with diverse populations across the state of Minnesota.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, this is the first of several conversations. Thank you for setting the bar high. And thank you, colleagues, for the discussion. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we will return and look at extension. So we are, in recess. All right, we'll reconvene with our next agenda. We'll have a discussion on University Extension. Dean of Extension, Bev Durgan, is here with us, and we will also be joined virtually by Ms. Lily Crona, a student from the Crookston campus. But first, before we begin with Dean Durgan, President Gable, would you like to introduce this item and our presenters?
Yes, thank you, Chair Davenport, Vice Chair Johnson, and members of the committee. So as we all know, Extension is the backbone of our core land-grant mission and exists then and today to help build a stronger Minnesota. We see it in incredible examples over a footprint spread out over 110 years, 89 county offices, 15 regional offices, rural, suburban, urban, tribal communities, and beyond. 65% of Extension's faculty and staff work in greater Minnesota, and thousands of trained volunteers multiply that reach by exponential numbers. I just got to see it in the most joyful, happy way in the young people who prepare to shape the future of our state through Minnesota 4-H, which is one of the best parts of the state fair every year, and in the partnerships that benefit our children and our children's children to 1,000 generations, as Abraham Lincoln once said, because we took the necessary steps to keep our agricultural community strong. We're very proud of Extension's footprint, which is so vital to who we are as a university and how we serve our state. And we are very grateful to Dean Bev Durgan and her entire team for everything they do to represent our university at home and across the globe, and the way in which they really fulfill our service mission so uniquely well. We're very proud of their commitment and work through the Mintersections portion of MPAC 2025. What they do is the cornerstone of our goal to enhance Extension's impact and reach, including a focus on increasing the number of community partners. So I know we're all looking forward to hearing Bev's presentation. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to her.
Very good. Dean Durgan.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, and Madam Chair and the board, thank you for this opportunity. As President Gable mentioned that Lily Crona will be joining me today. She is a 4-H alum, and she is currently a sophomore at University of Minnesota Crookston. So towards the end of this presentation, she will have an opportunity to talk about why she went to Crookston and how 4-H and Extension impact that both of those programs had on her decision to go to Crookston and also her career decision. So she couldn't be with us today because she's in class, so she'll be with us virtually. As President Gable said, that Extension's work in our mission is to address some of the important issues that citizens of Minnesota are facing. And we do that in a number of ways. One, by growing leaders, both youth and adults, strengthening families, enhancing rural economies, bridging the opportunity gap for both youth, adults, and families, and also studying what our future workforce is going to be in Minnesota, looking at the workforces now and what that workforce in the future is. So today I'm going to talk about several of the programs that we have that address some of these issues. As President Gable said, is that our mission is to connect the University of Minnesota with the citizens of the state. We have 15 regional offices in the state. We have 87 counties, but as President Gable said, there's actually 89 since some of those counties have dual offices. And 65% of our employees live and work in greater Minnesota. We like to say that Extension knows Minnesota because we live in communities, we work with the residents of the state, and we look very closely with them and work very closely with them to help to identify the issues of the state and how University of Minnesota research can help people make decisions about these issues. Today I am going to be talking about partnerships because partnerships are very important to Extension and how we do our work. And one of the partnerships that I would like to address is our long history of partnerships with county government. As we said, we have offices in all 87 or 89 counties, and the funding for these offices and for our educators that are located in these offices come directly from our county partners. So as you can see that our funding from our county partners continues to increase. We have a memorandum of agreement with every county that spells out how much funding that they provide for that county office and for the educators. And as you can see that this year it's close to $18 million that the county provides for local extension programming at the county level, which provides funding for about 155 extension employees located in those counties. So this partnership is very important to us. It's very important for the funding, but also it is really the way that we deliver our extension programs locally in each one of the counties. Another way that we enhance our programming at the local level and the county level is through our trained volunteers. University of Minnesota has 35,000 screened and trained volunteers this year in Minnesota, and they help deliver our programs through many of our volunteer programs, such as our Master Gardener program, Master Naturalists, our 4-H volunteers. We have a statewide Citizens Advisory Committee. And also, some of you may not know that Extension is legislatively mandated to have a county extension committee in every county, and we work very closely with that county extension committee to really set priorities for the county and what type of programs that the county would like to have at that local level. We have a new volunteer program that we are very excited about, the Aquatic Invasive Species Detector Program. And you've probably heard about that and that work of trying to identify lakes and to prevent new invasive species in those lakes. And then we also have volunteer program in nutrition education. We have volunteer chefs throughout the state that help deliver nutrition and cooking classes throughout the state. So again, our volunteers provide over 1 million hours of work delivering our educational programs and really help to extend what we can do at that local level. As was mentioned, Extension is included in the Impact 2025, and we are listed under Goal 3, which is really to enhance Extension's impact and reach. We look at this as an extension of enhancing the University of Minnesota's impact and reach, that we are throughout the state, and how do, as a land-grant university, do we really serve this state? And one of our action items is to increase the number of community partners by 20% by 2025. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is how we plan on doing that and what kind of partners we actually have in Extension. So first of all, the first thing we had to determine is just really how many partners we have. We know we had a lot, but just really trying to think about what is a partner. And we describe partners as agencies, individuals, communities that we have a long-term relationship with, or a relationship that continues over more than just an event. So our partners really help with planning educational programs, delivering those programs. They are community partners where we're convening, bringing citizens together to talk about issues, solving issues, and also with our applied research, since Extension does have an extensive program in applied research. So with this survey, we were able to identify 1,400 unique partnerships. So these are partnerships that our educators and our faculty identified. And some of the partners are ones that will not surprise you. They are partners that the university partners with also is the K through 12 system, higher education institutions other than the U of M campuses, government agencies, especially our state agencies, healthcare organizations throughout the state, our tribal communities, nonprofit organizations and for-profit organizations, and then community groups and neighborhood associations. So this information was very rich. Not only is it to help us meet our goals of Impact 2025, but it's also is helping us to take a look at this data to determine, are there areas of the state or sectors of the state that we're not serving? And where can we go to make sure that we are partnering where we should be partnering? It also is giving us some sense of where in Extension that we have multiple programs partnering with our partners. So trying to make sure we're being efficient about this and working with our partners in a great way. So we'll be doing this survey every year, and our goal is to increase our partnerships, but our goal is also, I think, to intensify our partnerships and make sure that it's two ways, that our partners have input into Extension and also has input into the type of programs that Extension has throughout the state. Another partnership that some of you may be aware of, but others may not, is our partnership with other land-grant universities and the extension systems within those land-grant universities. University of Minnesota has a long history of partnerships with North Dakota State University. We have tenure-track faculty and educators located at North Dakota State in Fargo. These faculty have statewide responsibilities and work both in Minnesota and North Dakota. Actually, this partnership started in the early 1980s, so it's a long partnership that we've had with North Dakota State. We have recently developed a partnership with University of Wisconsin Extension on a program that will be delivered through both states on rural entrepreneurship, and really taking a look again at workforce, rural entrepreneurship. University of Wisconsin Extension has a nationally known program in rural entrepreneurship, and so we're just very excited to be able to work with them to develop that program here in Minnesota. We are also in conversations right now with South Dakota State University about a joint faculty position that we're very interested in. So this has been a way for us to leverage our funding, especially our federal funding that we receive, and also to make sure that we're not duplicating effort in our partner states where we can really join to have a more of an impact in all the states. So what I'd like to do now is just to talk a little bit about some of the partnerships we have and some of the partnerships that maybe that you're not aware of, areas that Extension is working here in the state. And one is some of our rural health partnerships. We have a partnership with the College of Pharmacy at UMD to be working on solutions for the opioid epidemic in Minnesota. So this is a partnership with counties and also our tribal nations. We've received federal funding, but also county funding to develop this program. This program is on prevention, but also to help communities and individuals recover from addiction. And so this has been a program that's been very successful, and we are going to continue to expand this program. It's primarily in Northwest Minnesota. We also have partnerships with the School of Public Health, also the Minnesota Department of Ag, and others around mental health and safety in rural areas. I think many of you know that our rural areas are under a lot of stress right now, not only the agricultural community, but many of our other smaller communities. And so working on mental health, and one of the strengths that Extension has is that we're connected to those communities, and so we can get the mental health professionals in those communities where they're needed and really make that partnership work. One of our other partnerships that we're very proud of, and as President Gabel just said, is our partnership with the Minnesota State Fair. If you had a chance to be at the State Fair, you might have seen the 4-H building. This building actually housed and was home for over 6,000 4-Hers at the State Fair this year. This building is a State Fair building. It's 80 years old, and it is showing its age. So we are in conversations now with the State Fair and the State Fair Foundation to start a campaign to renovate this building so that it is a building that we can be proud to showcase what 4-H is in Minnesota today. So I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about 4-H. One of the needs that rural Minnesota has, I would say that the urban parts of the state also have, but we are focusing in the rural areas, is around leaders. And we know that rural communities really need leaders to be part of school boards, to be part of volunteering. So one of the programs that we have that is a partnership with the Minnesota state system is our Minnesota Ag and Rural Leaders Program. This is a little over a 20-year partnership with SMSU in Marshall. So it is one of the longest standing partnerships that the University of Minnesota has with the Min State system. And this program is really targeted towards leaders, in their their middle range of their careers to really help them go the next step of being leaders. And so the alumni of this program, we're starting to see them everywhere. They're in the legislature, they're in the school board, and we have an alum here sitting with us on the Board of Regents. So thank you, Regent Hupes, for being part of this program and really to be thinking about the role that the University of Minnesota plays in building those leaders and building that capacity in rural areas. As I mentioned with our partners, we have partners with school districts throughout the state. Many of our partnerships are what you would think that they would be on nutrition, working on farm-to-school programs, gardening programs with the schools. But we have a fairly new program working with school districts around clean energy. And the photo here shows you a photo from the Mounds View system where our clean energy resource teams, which are a partnerships with the Department of Commerce, Great Plains Institute, and the Southwest Regional Development Partnership or Commission, is working with schools to develop clean energy options. As you can see here in Mounds View is the installation of solar panels to, again, decrease the cost and the energy and to meet the energy consumption of that school district. But what is a little different also from this is that our clean energy resource teams are also helping teachers within these school districts to develop curriculum. So having the students within that school system to learn about clean energy, what is the economics of solar panels, and hopefully let them know that this is a University of Minnesota project and recruiting students, but also getting them interested in the STEM disciplines. So it's really a win for energy consumption, economics, and also getting students excited about clean energy. Another issue that we're facing in rural Minnesota, but also throughout Minnesota, is the impact of climate. And we are part of a multi-agency partnership around climate smart decision making. And so we know that in Minnesota, even this last year, that we had areas with too much water, areas with not enough water. And not only are farmers and ranchers dealing with droughts and floods, so are small communities. And when you have roads washed out, bridges washed out, decisions have to be made about how you're going to replace this infrastructure and what that means, and really having some predictions about where climate is going. So this effort is really being led by a new faculty member that we have that is a joint faculty position with CFANS, Dr. Heidi Roop, and she is leading this program to really work with communities and others about how do we can't change climate, but we can respond and we can adapt to that. And so we're very excited about this program and this partnership. There was a lot of conversation today with Crookston and the Chancellor about rural demographics, the changing in demographics, and also the workforce in Minnesota. So one of the things that one of our faculty members has been doing for a long time is really taking a look at our workforce and what the changes in that workforce is. And one of the things that I think we talked about today is that high school graduates often leave small towns and they want to go out and do other things. So they go to college, they get jobs, they have families, and then one of the things we hear from them is that they want to come back to rural Minnesota. So they want to raise their kids where they were raised, they want to be closer to family. But we know that these decisions are not only just based on the families coming back, but also where they want to live. And we know that all rural communities are not welcoming to our high school graduates coming back, or also newcomers. So the Rural Brain Gain is a program that is working directly with communities to help them determine if their communities are really welcoming to newcomers. Do they have things like high-speed internet? If they don't, how are they able to apply for additional funding to get that? For those of you that live in rural Minnesota, you know that housing is a big issue. Where's the housing market and how do people find housing? And then also around childcare. So this is really a program of just making sure helping communities be ready for newcomers, keeping those newcomers. And as we know, we really need to make sure that we have the youth back in Minnesota. So these families come back with spending power, education, and kids that go into those rural schools. So this program has really helped communities really decide what type of community they want to be and how they bring people back to rural Minnesota. I was also asked to talk a little bit about what we learned from COVID and extension. Just like our teaching colleagues here, we turned very quickly to online education, and we were able to have most of our programs go online. But now that we're in a different phase of COVID, we've learned that some of those programs can continue to be online. Our nutrition for low-income families, that one of the challenges that low-income families face is transportation. So being able to come to a meeting about nutrition, especially in the rural areas where there may not be transportation, they may be working, they can't go to a meeting during the day, having a remote meeting, a Zoom meeting on nutrition, cooking classes for the whole family is really something that they can participate in and that we'll continue to do. Also, other programs that are statewide programs that are basically lecturing to people, they can be online, our pesticide applicators training, our Master Gardener program. But others, we have to go on in person. So as you can see here, the snapshot, these are 4-Hers. 4-Hers like to be with 4-Hers. You know, they're like students everywhere. So we are moving lots of our programs back online, back in person, some online, and then also some are hybrid. Our Master Gardener program, we have both online and in-person training for our Master Gardeners. So we've learned a lot. We also learned that people will, come online to learn, and they really love our website. We have over 10 million hits to our website, so people love to come to our website and get information. All right, so I'll just conclude with our 4-H program. It is a program that we're very proud of at the University of Minnesota Extension. 4-H is the largest youth serving organization in the state outside the K through 12 system. And some of you may know 4-H. You know that 4-H really started in the rural areas of the state, and our roots are in agriculture, and they still are. But 4-H is, we are making 4-H, want 4-H to be accessible to all of our youth in the state. So I thought I just would give you a little demographics about what our 4-H program looks like right now. About 17% of our 4-Hers identify as youth of color. We have 6,500 new 4-Hers this year. We did see a drop in 4-Hers during COVID, and our enrollment has increased. 57% of them are first-generation 4-Hers. So their parents weren't 4-Hers, their grandparents weren't 4-Hers. And we have found is that our first-generation 4-Hers will probably, most of them probably will be first-generation college students. And so if we look at them, and that it's a great opportunity for us to really think about and help these students go on to their college career. 10% of Minnesota 4-Hers live in cities over 50,000 people, so really in our metro area. 21% of our 4-Hers live in cities and towns 10,000 to 50,000, so out suburbs, ring towns. 37% of our 4-Hers live in towns under 10,000, but they don't identify as living on farms, so they're in our rural communities. And 32% of our 4-Hers live on farms and identify as agriculture. So we are, again, one of our goals is to make sure 4-H is available to all youth in the state and really to broaden that, but still our roots are in rural Minnesota and in those smaller towns and in agriculture. We do have opportunities, and one of our goals is to make sure that our 4-Hers are career and higher education ready. And as the chancellor said, that we are working with our 4-Hers and using that as part of a student recruitment to our Twin Cities campuses. So to our whole system-wide campuses. We have campus immersion programs in Crookston, Morris, Rochester, Duluth, and the Twin Cities. We have summer camps. And one of the things that we have worked very hard at is finding additional funding to fund these camps. So we have funding from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. We also have just received a large federal grant from USDA NIFA, and that program is really targeted to first-generation 4-Hers and our minority 4-Hers. So we're very excited about being able to do this, and again, preparing our 4-Hers for graduating from high school and to also go into higher education. But this is where Lily will come in here with, I think that she is online. As we survey our 4-Hers, we find that about 71% of them attend post-secondary institutions. but we find the majority of them do not attend a University of Minnesota campus. So many of our 4-Hers go to our surrounding states, SDSU, NDSU, and Wisconsin. So I thought it would be interesting if we could bring Lily today to talk to you about how 4-H and Extension helped to inform her choices of where she wanted to go to college and also her career, and maybe to talk to you a little bit about some of the challenges that she's seen with some of her fellow 4-Hers about going to a Twin Cities, going to one of our system campuses. So Lily, I don't know if you are online. See if we can get you up.
I'm here.
Welcome.
Okay.
Welcome, Ms. Corona. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Lily Corona, and I'm a sophomore at the UMN Crookston. I began my 4-H career when I was in 3rd grade. My favorite projects include showing sheep and swine and entering pictures in the photography contests. When I was in 4th grade, I attended a livestock quality ethics and insurance course here on the Crookston campus. When I finished the course, 2 college girls came after and asked if I wanted a tour of the barns. I said yes, and I instantly fell in love. It was like a dream come true to have horses in the same barn that I would have some of my classes in. From that day on, I told everybody that I wanted to attend Crookston for school. When I was in high school, I had a friend that was interested in vet science. I told her to check out the Crookston campus because she might be interested in it. She toured and decided that she wanted to go there, and she just graduated this past spring and is now attending the St. Paul campus to be a large animal vet. I'm so proud of her, and I'm glad that she chose Crookston for her school. Through my years in 4-H, I've held various leadership positions, including club president and numerous positions on the Beltrami County 4-H Council, including secretary, followed by president-elect, followed by president. In 2020 to 2021, I was a Minnesota 4-H state ambassador. Through my time as a state ambassador, I was able to connect with youth from around the state of Minnesota and put together learning and leadership opportunities. Using some of the knowledge and skills that I gained from my time as a state ambassador, I brought it back to my home county in Beltrami County and worked with my extension educator to amp up our ambassador program to make it more hands-on and have more leadership skills for our youth in Beltrami. One of my other important opportunities that I had in 4-H was when I participated in the SOAR competition. SOAR stands for the Science of Agriculture Response Challenge. It's a challenge in which teams of 2 to 5 youth work together with a mentor to help solve a problem in agriculture. My team was made up of 3 youth, Teresa Gustafson, Haley Mosher, and myself. Together, we created a curriculum for 3rd through 5th grade students about GMOs. In 2018, we went to about 7 classrooms teaching about our lesson plan. We had a hands-on learning opportunity for them, as well as an animation that we created. After teaching in those classrooms, we put together a presentation and brought it to the state competition. We won 1st place and each received a scholarship award for our higher education. In 2019, we decided that we wanted to do another project. We decided to make a new curriculum on gene editing as we explained the tool of the future. That year, we went into about 10 classrooms. One of the coolest parts of this project was seeing students that we had previous year and talking to them and seeing that they remembered us and were excited to have us back again to teach. We went to the state competition again in 2019 and again placed 1st, receiving another scholarship award. This SOAR program got us interested in education, and we had very many opportunities to speak around the state of Minnesota to different groups about our project. One of my favorite opportunities was when we spoke to the Tri-State Agri-Women Conference, which had agri-women from Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota present. We got to make connections with some women in the industry, and that was a great opportunity. We also had the opportunity to fly to Washington, D.C. to attend the National Agri-Science 4-H Summit. We got to meet youth from around this country that were interested in agriculture and science, just like we were. After participating in the SOAR competition and in the State Ambassador Program, I realized that I loved teaching. I decided to major in agriculture education here in Crookston with a minor in animal science. In the future, I hope that I can influence more young people to choose careers in agriculture and help our world grow. Here in Crookston, I shoot trap for our team, and I really enjoy meeting new people and joining a lot of clubs. I feel like it's a small little home because I know everybody here and we're all really great friends. Thank you so much for my opportunity to share this story with you.
And thank you, Ms. Corona, and I invite you to stay with us as there might be some questions for you. And thank you, Dean Durgan. Are we ready to move to discussion?
We are ready. Thank you very much.
And I'd like to ask the first question to my colleagues, which I don't want an answer to, but more reflection on your own time, that Lily, you spur me to ask, and that's, when did you become familiar with Extension, whether it be through 4-H or any aspect of it? And if you reflect upon that, and you really brought this to life, I think, Dean Durgan, versus just reading the materials, the transformation that Extension has experienced and leads, I think especially here in Minnesota, has really been huge in the sense of how you adapt to the changing localities, the changing economic conditions, state, national, and now global perspectives that Extension embraces. And I would just say that it was in the 70s for me, and the 70s Extension versus today's Extension is vastly different. And Minnesota has always had a major leadership role, I view, in our nation with Extension and the activities that you do. So if you would, colleagues, reflect upon that in light of our presentation, I think that's of value. So ready for questions. And Regent Farnsworth, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair Davenport. Thank you for the presentation. This was great. To one comment and one question. I'll start with, well, I guess they're both about 4-H, but I guess I was surprised to hear about, the majority of 4-H students not going to a U of M campus. And of course, I'm probably as eager as everyone else is to help reverse that. So I appreciated hearing from our Lily, our Crookston student, a little bit more about that. But I'm wondering, Dean, if you have any kind of other comments about what we're doing within 4-H to help reverse that. And then I have one additional question, or just one quick comment after that, but that's my question.
Chair Davenport, Regent Farnsworth. I think there's lots of reasons why. I think that some of our, and Lily can talk about this from just some of your fellow 4-Hers, is that the Twin Cities campus seems daunting to many of our outstate students. And so bringing them on campus has helped. That's why we've also had campus immersion programs now at Crookston and at Morris and at Duluth. So what we have found is that bringing students on campus early, not waiting till they're juniors or seniors, bringing them in middle school, showing them what a campus experience is. Our campus immersion programs, they live in the dorms, and they really look at what college life is like, that has really is helping, I think. But, I will turn it, Chair Davenport, if Lily just wants to maybe talk a little bit from her experience and from some of her fellow 4-Hers that did not choose to stay in state or go to Crookston.
Yes, please, Lily.
I have a couple of friends that chose like NDSU or UND over one of the UMN schools. I think it's just kind of a bigger campus and there's more opportunities than Crookston would have. I know there's a lot of different programs that they have that Crookston doesn't offer, such as like a rodeo club. I think one of the schools has, that drove some of my friends to go there. And talking about the Twin Cities campus, that campus is really large. That's one of the reasons I didn't choose to go there, is because I'm scared of driving in the cities and I didn't want to have to worry about my commute to school every day.
Thank you. President Gable.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Bev, is your data, just for my own understanding, is your data that students are leaving the state or they're not coming to U of M schools?
Chair Davenport, President Gable, many of them are leaving the state. So, and they're not going far. They're going to SDSU, NDSU, River Falls. And I think, as talking to our 4-Hers, that seems to be where they're mostly going.
Thank you. Regent Farnsworth.
Thank you, and thanks for that answer. I think, highlighting this not as a negative thing, but as an opportunity, very much related to the topic of our last presentation, and a pocket of recruitment and retention opportunity for us. So thank you for that. And then second, as I was reviewing the docket materials for this, and just I'm coming off a stint working for the State Fair, I have a pleasure of doing a little State Fair side gig during fair time, and I'm often in the 4-H building and in our U of M buildings. And I think our presence is great at the State Fair. And I was going to ask about the building, but really glad to hear that we potentially have an opportunity with the 4-H building in particular. That is certainly getting up there in age. And that building and the programming and the ambassadorship that happens in that building is so important, not just for Extension and 4-H, but for our state. So if you need any volunteer champions or want any help with that, I certainly would volunteer myself as someone who sees that up close and totally gets that. To help with that, I'm really excited to hear that we may have an opportunity to do some renovations there and make that an even better space for generations to come. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Farnsworth. Regent Hitch.
Yep, thanks, Chair Davenport. I feel like I've been talking a lot today. Can you hear me now? Anyways, for those of you that don't know, Dean Durgan is a rock star in the state of Minnesota for as far as Extension goes. So she's everywhere all the time, and she does just an absolutely great job reaching out to all the different communities. I just want to talk about two things. One is the Real Brain Gain, and the other one is the 4-H MOUs. First, the MOUs, which is the Memorandum of Understanding that we have with the University of Minnesota as counties. Basically, we pay the cost of the 4-H agents. But there's more than that. I mean, that's about 40% of the cost that a county incurs. The other 60% is we provide the space, we provide the support staff, we support that person. And in Otter Tail County, when I was on the county board, we added extension agents for that to work with at-risk youth. And it really is working in our Boys and Girls Club and whatever else. And it's phenomenal to see somebody who doesn't have a lot of opportunity turn successful and really have an opportunity to go to the state fair, and it really changes the trajectory of their lives. So I want to thank you for that, and I think we can do a lot more. And I see that the MOUs with counties is going up, and I think it continue going up. And then I want to give a concrete example of how the Real Brain Gain affected our county. Right when, I think it's Ben Winchester, I can't remember for sure, but he gave us some reports on that there's a real brain gain coming to Real County. So what we did is we hired a Real Rebound Initiative coordinator to try to really go after that. And what that led is to hiring a person. Eventually we created a community development agency, and currently we're in a process of building 5,000 homes in 5 years, or housing units, to try to attract these people to come back into our communities to fill jobs. And so that never would have happened if it wasn't for the University of Minnesota and this Real Brain Gain initiative on the research. So the research does work, and it does have a huge impact. I mean, I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for Extension. Everything, the researchers do, we need extension agents to put that research into the field. And I was able to apply that onto my farms. And so it's a very important part of the university, and I think we need to really fund it to the full level that we can. And I agree with James Farnsworth and what he said about it's an opportunity on the 71% of the kids. I think that that's a huge opportunity for Crookston, Morris, and Duluth especially. So thank you.
Thank you, Regent Hitch, for your firsthand account. Any follow-up?
No, thank you. And Chair Davenport and Regent Hips is, again, we have very committed people working for Extension and very committed to making sure that communities and individuals succeed. And so I think the example here is taking the research and making sure that it's used.
Very good. Thank you. Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Chair Davenport. And Regent Hipsch, are you you're 4-H alum?
I'm not.
So, because obviously in Rural, you got your FFA crew, you got your 4-H crew, and then some people that actually bridged that gap. I was the 4-H side, so.
I wasn't either.
So I was a member of the Busy Buddies 4-H club in Steele County, and my children are now members of the Willing Workers, because all clubs must alliterate their first or their names. But no, and it's, you know, when you think about the history of extension and you think about the university's, you know, three-part mission and when so many people, when they think of the outreach function, the first thing that comes to mind is extension. We could dedicate an entire two-day meeting to getting into the vast offerings that, you know, extension provides and how it's impacted our state. We've also seen a lot of change over time. One of the things that I think is really interesting is that, you know, 25 years ago was a big focus on moving what had been a primarily rural operation into the metropolitan area. And I think over the 25 years, we see it's a challenge. And in a large part, I think, you know, at least my own thinking has changed a little bit in that things had organically grown in the metropolitan area, that reaching youth, different opportunities. And so, you know, it wasn't necessarily that we were going to be able to sort of shoehorn kids into a program that really does provide opportunities in rural communities, you know, because that's where those programs developed. And so I don't necessarily find it offensive that the program has a primarily rural component, just as there are programs within the metropolitan or more heavily populated areas that don't really exist in the rural areas. I don't think you necessarily have to take those programs and squeeze them into the greater Minnesota. So when you look at the numbers as far as where students are going and that they're not coming to the University of Minnesota campuses, it really is just overlaying where the membership is. I mean, it's very consistent with those rural communities. We're seeing those same numerical challenges in where people are finding themselves going after school. But, you know, I would join my colleagues over here in saying that even though things are very different, I mean, even agriculture is different. I mean, the sophistication of farming and the role of seed companies now, where at one point in time you would primarily rely on institutions like the university for development of new crop varieties and so on, that's now, you know, it's moved into a different realm. And so that role of extension, I think, has changed, and it's become much more focused on domestic and other opportunities for people in more isolated areas of the state. So I would just join my colleagues in saying that this is one of the best bangs for the buck we get at the University of Minnesota, and I know counties have stepped in. At one point in time, counties were stressed because some counties were losing their offices, right? And then, you know, very, very happy to see that over time that we've made sure we've kept that presence, and I think there may be some agent sharing and different things that are going on now. But at least from my perspective, and, you know, even following the Crookston discussion just recently, is that this is one of the ways that we as an institution meet our land-grant mission and keep that relationship with these states. And so I appreciate and applaud your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Rocha. Follow-up?
Thank you.
All right, very good. Good conversation, good work. And with that, we'll move on to our next agenda item.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you, and thank you, Lily, for being here with us today. Good luck on the rest of the semester.
Yes, thank you, Lily.
Thank you so much.
Okay. That brings us to our fourth item on today's agenda, the annual report on academic program change. And Provost Croson, that's yours.
Thank you, Chair Davenport, members of the board. We'll get the slides up in a minute. You can go to number 2. So this is a required and annual presentation. In addition, we note that the system-wide strategic plan guides our efforts to ensure that our curriculum and courses provide high-quality educational offerings that are responsive to the needs of our students and of the job markets to which they will be entering. This responsiveness means we must change our curriculum, our degree programs, and our other programs as the world changes. So what this presentation does is describe the process for those changes. You can go to the next slide. We also note the connection to Commitment 2 with our focus on increasing multidisciplinary opportunities in our curriculum. We know that the world has become more collaborative and multidisciplinary, and that our faculty have evolved our education alongside that. For example, CFANS recently collaborated with VetMed to create a subplan in the Animal Science Masters of Science degree for applied poultry sciences, leveraging the expertise of faculty in both colleges to create something that was in high demand by industry. A detailed and required report describing courses and curriculum changes from last year is provided in your docket, but I want to focus my remarks on describing the process we use to generate and evaluate these types of changes, the considerations we incorporate into our recommendations, and the various bodies we consult. My hope is that at the end of this presentation, you will understand the engagement and thoughtfulness that our faculty and program leaders utilize in determining these changes, so that when they come before the board, as they regularly do, you will know just how thoroughly they've been vetted. So the process we follow is guided by university policy, which notes that authority for academic plans originates at the local level in the departments and is subject to final authority of the Board of Regents. This policy covers a wide scope of programs: undergraduate, graduate, and professional degrees, majors, minors, and certificates. Basically, anything that earns academic credit on any of our campuses uses this process. I should note that it does not cover non-credit bearing trainings, including some continuing and executive education. In each meeting's consent report, the Board of Regents votes on the recommended program changes, additions, and discontinuations. When we recommend a new program, a change, or a discontinuation to you for approval, it's undergone a rigorous and thorough process of planning, consultation, and review. The process is designed to enact our shared commitment to continuous improvement in our courses and curricula, and to the commitments outlined in the system-wide strategic plan that I mentioned above. In each consent agenda, you will see different types of changes. Additions, including new degrees or majors, but also credit-based certificate programs and minors at the undergrad, grad, and professional levels. Changes, which could include a new name, a new degree designation, new subplans, which are often known as tracks or emphases or concentrations within a degree, changing the name of a program to reflect industry or changes in curriculum, or a change to the academic home of a program. We also discontinue degrees, minors, certificates, and fellowships when student interest subsides, or when the field or industry has moved into new directions, or when faculty and program leaders have determined that their priorities move elsewhere. As I noted earlier, we especially encourage additions or changes to increase multidisciplinarity. As a result, our process is structured to ensure communication among colleges and campuses as these programs develop. So proposals are initiated at the local level by the content experts who understand the intellectual directions of their disciplines, job market, and their field's relationship with state and economic needs. Faculty members lead this process, and the proposals are expected to ensure financial viability, student and industry need, and alignment with our mission. Proposals are required to address these 5 common criteria, which are described more fully in your docket. In particular, we require that proposals speak to need and demand, which is often demonstrated through consultation with outside entities for need and students for demand. As an example, the Department of Chemical Engineering and Material Sciences on the Twin Cities campus engaged in an extensive discussion with members of their external advisory board. That board included representatives from Dow, 3M, Sherwin-Williams, General Mills, Medtronic, and Anderson Windows. And they asked what their graduates needed to know in order to succeed in the workforce. As a result of those discussions, the department created a Master of Science in Data Science specifically for the chemical engineering and material science industries. The new degree is multidisciplinary. It's offered in coordination with the Department of Computer Science and Engineering and with the School of Statistics, which is in the College of Liberal Arts. It delivers data science education in the specific industry context of chemical engineering and material science. As this example illustrates, engagement with industry experts, potential employers, and drawing on the multidisciplinary expertise found at our amazing university is a pivotal part of making the case for a new program. Each college and campus has their own process for development, planning, and consultation of new program proposals. They often involve department and college-level curriculum committees who judge the proposals based on these same 5 criteria. And if concerns are raised, the proposal is typically sent back to the original unit for revision and resubmission. Once a proposal has gone through the collegiate or campus approval, it's advanced to review at the university level. As proposals make their way through the approval process to the office of the provost, consultation is solicited from colleagues in graduate and undergraduate education, as well as the academic health sciences. For Twin Cities undergraduate majors, we also see consultation from the campus curriculum committee. This group, whose members are selected by the deans, has broad representation from across the campus. They meet monthly, and in addition to these common criteria, they review the proposal for potential duplication and to ensure that the consultation that needs to have taken place has taken place. Because the members are from different departments across the university, they are one more mechanism that can advocate for multidisciplinary curriculum. Once the campus curriculum committee has reviewed or requested clarification or edits, staff in the provost office evaluate the proposal. My staff and I are reviewing these proposals in terms of university policy compliance and accreditation, but also to ensure that each is aligned with the mission of the university, as well as the system-wide strategic plan and the strategic plan of the home unit, that it meets the compact and budget constraints of the unit, and that it lacks duplication within our system and within our state. Consultation is built into this process because typically academic program decisions have the potential to affect other units. For example, a new program in the College of Nursing might increase demand for classes in the College of Biological Sciences, and they need to be prepared to handle the new demand. On the other hand, a new program in the School of Public Health might decrease the demand for classes and majors in the College of Liberal Arts, and the institution needs to weigh the costs and benefits of the proposal and the resulting budgetary reallocation with a focus on what would be best for the students. As a final check, all proposals slated for the consent report are posted for public review prior to the Board of Regents meeting. Finally, the review needs to be timely. Academia can move very slowly. And while consultation can help identify potential unanticipated consequences from program changes, it can also slow the process down. So our process aims to strike a balance to ensure that there's been adequate consultation and rigorous review, while also remaining agile, so that faculty can align student degree and curricular experiences with the cutting-edge discoveries of their fields and changes in the market. This latter point is among the reasons why students want to study at a research university. Proposals come before the board only after all of these steps are complete and after I have reviewed and approved the findings of the preceding groups. The process sounds linear, but it's actually not. Proposals are often reworked and sent back through the process to address concerns identified at different stages. And sometimes proposals are abandoned if concerns are raised that can't be overcome. Your docket has a list of the new programs, changes, and discontinuations that you approved last year, as well as other detailed data, including how those data have changed in the last 5 years. But with these changes in mind, it's also important to understand there are not necessarily increased costs with every new program, nor savings if a program is discontinued. In many cases, faculty are leveraging or redirecting existing courses or resources in order to meet new needs. So thank you, Chair Davenport and members of the board. We're happy to discuss this process further and answer any questions you might have about it.
Thank you, Provost Croson. And I would add that Regent Ruth Johnson and I thought it was very important that you not only see the outcome of the process, but understand the process, because this is very heavy lifting on a regular basis. And it really embraces all parts of the mission in the sense of educational programming, the research we do, and the outreach, because new program changes, as you see when you look through the list, really reflect today's workplace, reflects today's issues and research. So that's why we wanted to spend some time on that with you. So Regent Swigum, you have a question.
Madam Chairman, thank you. During this presentation, before your arrival here as provost, maybe 4 years ago, we talked about much the same things, the program's interest, demand, need. And I asked the question about how many programs, degrees do we have that are less than 50 students in the program? And we got a report. It was significant. I mean, there was, I don't have it with me right now. My preparation for today is not good. But that was less than 50 students. But we had a number of degrees programs that were less than 10 students. Some of it, I'm sure, because of needed outreach, some of it because of being politically correct, whatever it may be. Talk to me, Provost, a little bit about the need, the demand, the interest if you have a program or degree with only 4 students, and I know we have one.
Sure we do. So thank you, Regent Swigum, Chair Davenport, for the question. So indeed, low enrollment in a program is often a reason for discontinuation. It's certainly a reason for review, and you'll see some in the discontinuation set that have that property. On the other hand, we often have programs where the marginal cost of delivering them is about 0. We're already offering these courses, students are already enrolled in them. If we package up the courses this way, they can get this certificate or this degree or whatever that is, and we don't necessarily see a reason to discontinue that program because there are some students, maybe 10, maybe 40, who are benefiting from it. And so when we're looking at low enrollment programs, we're thinking about both the benefit and the marginal cost.
So I should not, Provost, Madam Chair, excuse me, I should not necessarily just relate interest, demand, and need to the number of students. There's obviously other things that get involved.
Exactly.
Very good. Seeing no other questions, we'll move on to the consent report. And everyone received a printed copy of the revised item at the start of our meeting. And Provost Croson, would you please provide a brief introduction of the items in the consent report, noting the revised item?
Thank you, Chair Davenport. Having just heard an overview of the process that generates the consent report and a report on last year's program changes, I now present the first consent report of this year for your consideration with my and President Gable's recommendation for approval. I will confirm that the revised consent report you received on your desks corrected a small error in the title in one of the program changes listed, which mistakenly missed the CLA Global Studies program as Global Health Studies. Is it indeed Global Studies? I'm happy to take any questions on the consent report.
All right, no questions. Is there a motion to recommend approval of the consent report?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Now any questions? Hearing none, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying no. And the motion is approved. Thank you. And our next item, our last item, information items. Provost Croson.
Thank you, Chair Davenport. I'd like to note we've added links to more information in the items contained in our regular report of faculty, student, and staff accomplishments. We hope you find it valuable to be able to click on those to learn more about any of the items that are included in the report. Additionally, this report includes 2 reports that were recently sent to the state legislature, a new required agriculture weather study, as well as a report on expenditures on biotechnology and medical genomics, as well as an update on 2 policy reviews. Chair Davenport, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. I want to just make a note too, takes a lot of work to put those links in there. I know. I like them. I'd like to read that kind of stuff. I hope that you do too, take a look at that and appreciate the work that's gone into that. So thank you. That concludes our committee business. We'll stand adjourned. Thank you.
Are you moving up?